Hi everybody, Tracy Brown here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my last diet and what that looked like. And so the reason for the impetus for that is because today's my wedding anniversary. I've been married 14 years today. And so it marks the anniversary of two obviously important things in my life. One is, marrying my best friend. And secondly, I would say about 2 months prior to that, I stopped my last diet. And these things go together. So let me give you a little bit of how I got to the last diet, and it took a couple years. Um, but it has a point why it's so important to how I got there. So I met my husband in 2001, and it wasn't love at first sight, but it definitely was this connection of like, I know you and I see you. So we became really good friends. We worked at the same place together, and um, just became really good friends. And it was one of those moments of me deciding to be open with another person. And immediately that started to shift, like some of my behaviors with food. At this time, I'm a senior in college, and I'm also having these other simultaneous shifts of coming to this last year of college. And I was working with my dietitian at the time too. And I started to make more friends at last year, and I started to really challenge what I was learning because I was essentially learning how to put people on really good diets, and I was trying to get away from that and all my food obsession and my exercise compulsion. Um, so a lot of those things all started to converge at one time. By the way, at those all time, I was still toying with restriction and deprivation driven eating almost on a daily basis, by the way. But it had gotten so much better from gosh, I was in my, I don't know, I guess I was 20, 21. It took me 5 years to graduate just because of the disordered eating stuff. And I having to take breaks because I couldn't focus, and I was so food and weight obsessed that I couldn't really focus on school that well. So I took a couple part-time or part semesters off. But anyway, so here I am in my last year, and I'm challenging the things I'm learning just mentally about like, well, here are my friends who I hang out with and with all the time, and I see their eating habits, and they eat a variety of foods, and none of them really have major issues with food, and yet they're bigger people, let's say. Some of people actually were. I was very lucky in my undergrad not to have too many disordered eating other um, soon-to-be dietitians around me. There were a few, but not that many, which was really lucky. Later on in my internship, there were several people that were highly disordered, and that's very common in our field. But anyway, so being around people and seeing how they ate and recognizing that people of all shapes and sizes eat a variety of foods, and that's not the main impactor on their weight. Um, and, meeting my husband at the time was just a friend, and building like this authentic relationship around just being present to each other, which was really lovely. And I never had that with really any person before. And having a really other great friend, love you, Stacia, if you're watching, that she had just graduated and she was in the same major as I was, and working through her own food stuff, and just a good friend that we were both on this journey together. And I could really, she would call me on my stuff of my working out, like, why do you really need to go again? And we'd eat more meals together and try to do this in a non-disordered way to not trigger each other. And so it was really healthy and good. And she would also call me on my not so great choices I was going through in my life with like a current boyfriend, which other videos I've talked about how traumatic that those experiences were. You can look at those later on if you want to. And that's the beginnings of how the song that's falling in place. So let's flash forward a couple more years. So my husband and I broke up with a boyfriend. We started to decide, like, okay, this is more than friends, how those kind of things work. And I ended up doing something really radical. I was supposed to go to my undergrad and go on to grad school, and I had a teaching assistantship and a lot of things going for me. It was the first time ever in my whole life I really made a decision to do what I really wanted to do, which was not go to that school. And moved to where my then boyfriend at the time and soon to be fiance and then husband was living, which wasn't in our state anymore. He had moved prior to us deciding that we were going to be together. The reason that's important to know is because I made something like what I wanted more important than my body size at that point, because that was a super stressful, as you can imagine, taking a risk to be happy. Oh my gosh. That gave me a lot of personal power and recognition that, like, one, people were friendly with me even if I didn't lose weight. Two, somebody wanted to be with me at whatever body size I was and was willing to make sacrifices to be with me, and me vice versa. And so that was huge. And so in that year prior to us getting married and doing some work again still with that dietitian, with intuitive eating, and it wasn't as much body acceptance. I kind of had to learn some of that on my own, but definitely with like learning to just the nutrition, hunger and fullness work, got me so far in this journey with just doing that work with her. So anyway, I moved to a different state and, wasn't really exercising as much, which was awesome. And I was very compulsive prior to that. And, really started, because I was eating meals with a person very consistently. So we were eating, not every meal together, but I had this expectation that, like, I wanted to show up and be normal. So that really helped. Did I still have some diet thoughts? Totally. And did I still have some days where I restricted and then overate dessert or overate something? Totally. I did. So 2 of them along pretty good, and then we get engaged. So we get engaged, like, we really didn't want to have a big wedding, but that's ended up kind of what happening. But we really didn't want to wait just because we knew we wanted to be together. So what's the point? So anyway, we're waiting so long. So we got engaged in January, got married the next May, that following 3 or 4 months after, I guess 5 in May. And then, like, I think, the impact of that big a decision in your life probably was some of what I put back into the container of diet and exercise compulsion. So I started exercising compulsively again, and I hooked up with this trainer. When I say hooked up, meaning like I started working with this woman who is a national level fitness competitor. She put me on her crazy, fitness diet. And by the way, at that time, clean eating had been around in those circles since the late 90s. This is not a new word, people. Clean eating's been around a long, long time. And this is what she prescribed me to do, like these very protein and veggie heavy meals with some carbs in there. And of course I started binging again really quickly, and I could see the writing on the wall that this wasn't going to work. And so I remember, like, getting back into the stressful mode of, like, I have to, like, get leaner for my wedding, and those pictures will be around forever and all that bullshit, to be honest. And I recognized I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to drag this stuff into the next chapter of my life, which is even though it wasn't going to change, like, what I'm doing, like, with my relationship, but it was just this idea of, I don't want to bring this into the next phase, so I'm not going to do it. So working with this expensive trainer, but I stopped. I mean, I still work with her a little bit because she was actually a nice, good person, and even though she was totally in the diet mentality, she wasn't totally off the rails, and she was a very good person. So I still work out with her a little bit, but I stopped the diet part. I didn't lose any weight, and I didn't lose any weight on the clean eating fitness competitor program she had either. It was just too stringent for me and too triggering, and I couldn't do it. And so I just decided, I'm done. This is it. This is the last time. And it was the last time. And it wasn't that, like, instant decision. I wrestled with that for, so January through May. I mean, January and half of February was pretty, like, I'm going to do this, and by March I'm like, I can't do this. No, and it also felt like a moral, ethical thing in terms of the career I was getting ready to go into, as well as just emotional, mental, spiritual thing for me of, like, this has to be done. And I had to think about all the people that would be at this wedding. Of course, my soon-to-be husband. Nobody needed me to be leaner, to be beautiful, to look good, to be happy, because I had been plenty happy prior to January and getting engaged. And so that's really important. I want all you soon-to-be brides to hear this, or anybody thinking they have to go on a diet before an event. Nothing's going to change. You look back on those pictures and think, oh, I look thinner, but are you happy? I started to feel really terrible and obsessed again, and I recognized I didn't want that to show in the pictures. I didn't want and I knew that like how those pictures wasn't going to be lasting because I've been on that roller coaster for many years prior to that. So I just want to share that story with you guys that that was my last diet. It doesn't mean that like my body image woes ended there, but it was the last time that I purposely tried to lose weight. And oh, how much freedom that brought. And I'm hoping that for you as well. And so if you feel so called, I would love to be able to talk to you about how to work through those transitions in your own life. You know, I have a 6-month coaching program that's both this highly potent and powerful combination of group support, which is why I talked about my friends so much in this video, is that like part of the reason I got to be able to do that last diet was because of more connection and more support in my life and people who were healthy and talked about healthy things, and so they built that neural pathway in my mind and in my heart to be able to accept and make more possible a life without dieting and being off that roller coaster. And that's what this program offers, is this kinship around being more fully embodied and figuring our life and getting to the root of what the container of dieting means for you and to know how to leave that behind. So if you're interested, please message me. You can email me at tracybrownrd.com, or I'm sorry, that's my website, tracybrownrd.com. You can email me at tracybrownrd@gmail.com. If you want to know more about it, I love to have personal conversations with people to make sure that these kinds of things are right for you. And, you know, I don't do pressure. I don't do any of those things. I just want to offer you freedom in what's possible. All right, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day and talk with you soon. Take care.